The Green Bay Packers survive their first trap game of the season and get an opportunity to reclaim first in the NFC North with their upcoming matchup against the Detroit Lions. Guys, I'm Nariah Chapek. Grab yourself a drink because it is time to pour ourselves another Packers podcast. Okie dokie. Well, here we are. We had some conversation, probably like 10 minutes of banter before this recording started. And the one thing I forgot to tell you and mention was I need you to bring the positivity because I might get a little negative in this episode. I might get a little bit down. And even though our wavelengths, seem to match up on a lot of things, you're a glass half full kind of guy. I'm a glass half empty, it seems like. From week to week. What's there been on maple syrup? Is that what that says?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, just straight maple syrup.
And the kids want pancakes tomorrow morning, so I figured I would test out the maple syrup tonight.
Oh, you're gonna filter it through your system. I was really concerned.
Wow, really concerned. Your mind went to a very weird place.
I don't know. Anyway, well. As I mentioned in the intro, Packers survive a game down in Jacksonville, 30-27. Brandon McManus, our kicker for 2 weeks, ends up with his second game-winning field goal. I don't know what to think of this team, dude. I'm not even going to end to know what I think about this team.
All in all, I got the victory shades on again. That's what's important, right? That's what's important. That game was more stressful than I was expecting it to be. We had the very intense game against the Houston Texans the week before. Thought this one was going to be a little bit more of a relaxing game. Packers take a lead early, defense holds strong and they kind of just coast through the game. That obviously was not the case. And I think the biggest thing was the Jordan Love injury, which obviously we'll get into in more depth, but it threw everything off with the offense. The defense still played pretty well, but the offense just was off. So it just made everything very stressful, but ultimately, again, come away with a win, victory shades again, moving on to week 9.
I've been a little up and down with this team over the last couple of weeks. I mean, it's our 4th straight win. As I've alluded to in previous episodes, they're winning these games that they had dropped last season. So it's good that, you're getting a victory. A win's a win. Both Minnesota and Chicago end up with losses in week 8. So they kind of take a notch in the right direction overall in the division. But it really was kind of a tale of 2 games again. I think I said that last week. And they took such leaps against who'd they play against?
The Cardinals.
Before the yes, they took such leaps against the Cardinals. They managed to hold on and win the game against Houston Texans in a game where they kind of shot themselves in the foot. And in this particular game, it wasn't so much that they shot themselves in the foot. It was that they could never really find that momentum or anything kind of grooving. That's concerning. We're definitely going to get into the Detroit Lions game in the later half of this episode, but they have not really clicked at any rate consistently throughout this season. And they're facing, I think, something that you would agree, the best team in the league coming up against Detroit, who's just looked red hot over the last 4 weeks or so. So I don't know. I mean, it was a road game. I didn't like the fact that they were traveling to Jacksonville. I was worried that it had trap game possibilities or vibes to it. I think we felt confident that the team would be in the right mindset. And I don't even think they were in the wrong mindset. It's just, they just didn't play very well at certain times in the game. You agree?
The offense wasn't clicking. And I think it was a big part of it was the Jordan Love injury. He just wasn't performing the way that he normally can. So I think the play calls were a little limited. I think his ability to extend plays was definitely limited. So it just kind of hindered the whole offense. Like you said, I don't think it was a matter of them not being ready for the game mentally. I think that early injury and then him to continue playing through the injury was what kind of slowed things down for the offense.
Yeah, before he went out, he had 196 passing yards. He was 14 for 22. Had some pretty good stats going. He had that interception that one just, I hate that so much. I don't like any interceptions, but specifically, I wanted him to go through a whole game without one. And
Yeah.
that happening late on a scoring drive, potential scoring drive.
That
But
that pick
go
though
ahead.
was I don't think Love put it in a bad spot. I don't think it was on the receiver. I think that pick was just a very good play by the defender. I don't know that I can be upset with Jordan Love over that one. I can't be upset with the receiver for that one. It was just a good play by the defender.
And it was a good play. I would say that it didn't feel like it had any sauce on it as far as the pass goes. Like that out route type of pass needs to have a little bit more velocity. And that, again, goes back to that injury. So you brought it up twice, me bringing it up for the first time. He gets injured essentially on the first drive of the game, gets that groin injury, manages to play out the rest of the first half, comes in the third quarter, gets bumped in the front and then hit in the back. And that was just kind of the end of the day when it came to Jordan Love. Once again, with injuries, I feel like we're talking about way more than I want to, but Matt LaFleur is very tight-lipped on the extent of the injury. NFL Network claims that it is only a sprain. It's going to be kind of a day-to-day. We'll see if he can go on Sunday. My gut says that he will probably play on Sunday, but that's maybe a conversation for later in the episode. But Love goes out. Malik Willis comes in. And the two things that we talked about more than anything in the training camp and leading up to the regular season was backup quarterback and kicker. And we find that both of these have been huge reasons on why we're 6-2 this season. Not so much Jordan Love and his outstanding play or anything along those lines, but the ability for Malik Willis to come in, have calm, poise, if you will. The players in the locker room say that as well, is that he doesn't seem rattled when he comes into the huddle. It was the first game really where he had to take over for an extended period. Yes, he came in late in week 1, but he had time to prepare for 2 games against the Tennessee Titans and the Indianapolis Colts, and he had to come in off the bench, no game plan, no nothing. And I think he held his own pretty darn well.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that the coaching staff asked a whole lot of him when he did come in. The play calls, I feel like, were pretty simple. A lot of running plays. They leaned on Josh Jacobs a lot. And Willis ran the ball well as well. He didn't take any unnecessary risks or anything like that. And then obviously the one big play down the sideline to Jaden Reed, that was the highlight of his day. And yeah, it was a great pass, but Jaden Reed was also wide open, like no one around him. So it was a pretty easy dump to him and big gain. So I don't think they asked a whole lot of him. So it was a pretty easy route for him to perform well. We'll see what happens this week in practice. I really hope Jordan Love can go. But if he can't, obviously we've seen what Malik Willis can do. And I don't have any reservations about him being the starter.
Yeah, if he can't go, Jordan Love, that is, I don't know. I mean, I'm really trying not to preface where I want to go, but I think Malik Willis, to your point, can control the offense well enough. I think Matt LaFleur can game plan well enough with Malik Willis in there. His only incomplete throw was off of the fingertips of Dobbs across on a third down. And that was just because it was a bullet that came out of there, and I don't think Dobbs expected it.
Right.
Malik goes 4 or 5. But outside of that, where, again, they're not asking him to do too much, but I text you on Sunday while watching the game. It's probably the most we've talked during the game since the season started. But there seems to be some sort of magic genie that appears that opens up running lanes whenever Malik Willis is in there. Because it seems, I'm not crazy. I believe you agree with me, but this run game operates so much better for whatever reason when Malik Willis is behind center. One of the reporters brought it up in the interview Sunday after the game, and Matt LaFleur didn't really pay no mind to it, but I think other people are noticing that the run game seems to to operate better with Willis back there. And to kind of prove
Yeah.
a point, so Jacobs had 25 carries for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns on Sunday. But when Willis came in, he had 88 of those yards rushing and only 40 yards rushing when he had Jordan Love in there the entire first half. So I don't know if it's the worry that Willis is going to scramble. I don't know if it's more of a pass blocking type of mentality when they have their offensive lineman in there, but it's a real mystery to me on why they can't have the best of both worlds with Love
Yeah,
and Jacobs.
after you had texted me about that, I 100% agree. It seems like the run game with Jacobs and the offensive line run blocking well seems to come alive when Willis is in there. And I was racking my brain trying to figure out what it was as well. So I agree. Is it a pass blocking mentality as opposed to a run blocking mentality when Willis is in there? Is it a play calling thing? Obviously, with Jordan Love going out, you would expect the defense to maybe put more guys in the box because they expect you to run. So is it a difference in the type of run plays that LaFleur is calling? Or, the other piece of it, you already mentioned it, the ability that Malik Willis has to run the ball as well. Our defense is a little more hesitant to commit to the run because they know that he could pull it and go the other way, where Jordan Love typically doesn't do that. Jordan Love can run the ball, but he's more of a pocket passer than a dual threat guy. The other potential reason in my mind, I guess, is Josh Jacobs. When Jordan Love, the starting quarterback, goes out, maybe mentally he feels like he needs to put the team on his back and he just kicks it into a whole nother gear. But if that's the case, I don't wait until Jordan Love isn't in the game. Do it all the time, So it is very hard to figure out. And we've seen it every time that Malik Willis has been in. This Packers run game all of a sudden blows up. Not that they're terrible with Love in the game, but it just feels different for sure.
It does feel different. And you might be onto something, but Jacobs brought that up, at least the interviewer did post game. Like, when Love goes out, Jacobs felt like he had to step up, like the rest of the guys had to step up around him as well. But Jacobs just decided to have a game specifically once Malik Willis was back there. And I hope that at some point this season, we can get both of these combinations of that run game and a Jordan Love pass attack. And maybe that's what I'm waiting for this team to really try to just wow me as, okay, this offense looks elite. And then we can talk about the defense as well. And I think it's important to talk about this defense because they played 80% of that game lights out. They were outstanding. This is like, man, we got ourselves a defense. The first half, they had 4 straight possessions to start the game without giving up a first down. That included a 6th interception by Xavier McKinney. 138 total yards given up in the first half. They gave up 10 points, but then the second half rolls around. Yes, they still had 3 and outs, 1 forced fumble recovery, but they gave up 232 total yards, 17 points. And probably most concerning is the last 2 drives that Jacksonville had on offense. So Trevor Lawrence is a talented quarterback. He hasn't really probably lived up or played to his potential so far this season, but he definitely showed it those last 2 possessions that Jacksonville had the ball. Jacksonville down 27-17. And a side note, I almost texted you when it was 27-17 because my score prediction was 34-17. And I'm like, man, one more touchdown by Green Bay, I'm spot on. But anyway, their last 2 possessions, Jacksonville goes 8 plays, 51 yards, kicks a field goal, down by 7. And then they get the ball back and they go 8 plays, 87 yards, and have a touchdown. And that touchdown came around 3 Packers defenders, specifically McKinney and Alexander, who Alexander limped off, hurt himself. He's questionable as well. I have no update on him whatsoever. But for a defense that looks so dominant for most of that game, to kind of let Jacksonville get back into it, especially when we kind of had them down and out there late in the fourth quarter, you would have loved to have seen a better close by the Packers defense. And you and I even discussed, if that game goes into overtime, I don't think the Packers necessarily win that game.
Right.
Momentum had shifted, and it was really a stressful, more stressful than it needed to be situation. And the defense had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, it was a little frustrating to see that at the end of the game. Just them let them back in. You kind of covered it all. I don't know. I don't really have any other
Well, I
comments.
guess
I
my
agree.
question to you would be, is there cause for concern with this defense? Was that just like a blind spot? That's probably what we saw in that last 2 minutes, not 2 minutes, 8 minutes of the game. Was some of the most head scratching defensive, tendencies that we see. They were playing more zone rather than man to man. They haven't really given up that type of yardage that consistently since they played the Vikings way back in week 4. So I don't know. Is that a cause for concern? Because we got the number 1 scoring offense coming up here this week.
Mm-hmm.
Are
Yeah,
there
I don't know
telltale
that.
maybe cracks in this defense?
No, honestly, this defense has progressively gotten better and better. We have seen it earlier in the season where, it's kind of, it's not, they didn't play a complete game. This is another one of those examples. It's another
Really?
opportunity for them to take a step forward, get back to playing a complete game like they did against the Texans. Obviously, we talked about how the defense basically won that game for the Packers. The game against the Cardinals, that was a much more complete game than we had seen. So, yeah, the game against the Jags was a little bit of a back step, but you even said it yourself. 80% of that game, they looked like an elite defense. What caused them to kind of take a step back in that fourth quarter? I'm not sure. Maybe injury issues. Maybe, I don't know, fatigue. Maybe they're playing in Florida. It's hot, not used to the heat. Maybe that played a factor. So I don't know. I don't necessarily know that I'm concerned about the defense, but it is something to monitor, right? We want them to continue to be able to play a complete game as an elite defense.
So maybe the heat played a role in it, but at the end of the day, it's tough to not overreact. But at the end of the day, it's 6-2, come away with a victory. We both had kind of that pit in our stomach heading into the week that it was going to be a little bit of a dogfight, that they would have instances come up where they have to scrap by and just get a W. That's all it really matters for. When we get to week 17 and 18 or the end of the season, it's not going to matter if we won this game by 3 or if we won this game by 25. That'd be a weird score to win by the way. But they managed to squeak through and come away with the victory. We talked about Jacobs. We've talked about Malik Willis, a little bit of Xavier McKinney. You have some players in particular that I haven't mentioned yet that you feel like you want to give a little bit of love to, or is there something else you'd like to cover about this game?
So as far as talking about specific players, you hit on McKinney. He had a pick. Malik Willis came in, kind of took care of business, finished out the game. Jacobs played well. How about Tucker Kraft? He was kind of quiet for most of the game. And that one big play that he had, obviously it was a great play, but that type of play where he's just trucking down the field, pushing the guy off of him over and over, just get off of me, I'm not stopping. Like it was a momentum swinger, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
Because their offense had been kind of stagnant. Love was injured. They weren't producing on offense. And then Tucker Kraft comes in and just manhandles that defender, and new life came to the offense, I think. So this is the last thing I'll say about that week 8 game against the Jaguars. So we've talked about some of the struggles that the Packers had in a game that we expected them to be a little more dominant. But one thing that this game showed more than anything is the depth that this team has and their ability to, with their franchise quarterback, star quarterback, injured early on, obviously not himself, not playing well, a backup coming in, and the defense not quite, finishing out the game. They showed that even with all of that against them, they still came out with a win. So the depth and the resiliency of the team is what showed out. And they're 6-2. It's a win's a win. I don't care how ugly it is. A win's a win.
Who gets credit for that? Is that a Matt LaFleur thing? Is that a whole coaching staff mentality? Is that the players that get credit for that? Or is it just the team in general just coming together and having each
I
other's back?
think, I think over the whole organization. I mean, you can talk about the players sticking together and duking it out as a team when they face adversity. You can give credit to the coaching staff taking these curveballs that they're thrown and making do with what players are on the field, playing to their strengths, like Malik Willis playing to his strengths when he's in the game. And then all the way up to Gutekunst in the front office, choosing these players and making the moves that they did this offseason to put this team with crazy good depth together. The depth is going to allow them to continue to be successful and make a run into a hopefully deep into the postseason. I still think that there's championship aspirations with this team, even with the struggles that they've had, because of that resiliency and that depth.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. My championship aspirations are still there, but what they've put out on film these first 8 weeks isn't going to be enough, right? They have to figure out the
Yeah.
rest of it. And luckily, they're getting their wins, to your point. I will say, to put a ribbon on or a bow on that last comment about Gutekunst, I mean, the fact that he went out there, we carried 2 backup quarterbacks and 2 kickers all throughout training camp, and he parts way with the backup quarterback to get Malik Willis because he feels like that's the right move. And then he doesn't waver 2 weeks ago, a couple weeks into the season, to cut Narveson, who he actually went out to get to be the savior for the season, and picks up a Brandon McManus. They're willing to definitely make moves, and they're not splashy ones, but they're the right moves needed to keep this team going in the right direction. I do want to circle back to Tucker Kraft real quick because I had his name down as well. And yeah, outstanding play. That was a huge momentum shift. That was a big pass completion, pass and catch from Jordan Love and Tucker Kraft. That was his 5th touchdown in the last 4 games. But outside of just his performance these last couple of weeks, did you see his player interview, his locker room interview after the game on Sunday?
No,
So
I didn't watch it. No.
he's really starting to take on a leadership role in this team. And what surprises me so much about it is that he's a second-year player. It's only his 2nd year on the team, and it probably helps that it's a young team in general. But he had a comment that said specifically about the offense, we need to be more accountable. We need to hold ourselves more accountable. Players are making mistakes. I'm making mistakes. We're better than this. And he's kind of calling out that offense as, a second-year player, a tight end who's had a couple great weeks. It's really great to see. And to his point, the Packers, the last 3 weeks have only averaged 2.3 points in the first quarter of these games. So they're not, they take a while for that engine to fire up and get going. And this is a voice. You're not going to get a voice from Romeo Doubs. He's going to be the silent, I'll let my results do my speaking, my actions do my speaking sort of a thing. Jordan Love's a vocal leader. Josh Jacobs is a veteran, but I wouldn't, he's I guess a leader on that team, but to see someone else like that on the offense step up and say, hey guys, we need to get our crap together, because I'm not going to swear, is really promising to see out of such a young player. And I had to make a point to bring that up. It's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I didn't see that interview, but I agree. Leadership is important. And if you don't, we've talked about it before, and I feel like that was part of the issue back in the Rodgers years. Aaron Rodgers was not a very vocal leader in the locker room, and I think that affected things. So seeing Jordan Love be a vocal leader, and now Kraft kind of taking up that role, especially for a young guy, because he's going to be around for a while. And if he continues to play well and establish himself on the team, hopefully he's around for a while and continues to be that vocal leader in the locker room.
See, I think, Rodgers started out as a leader when he was starting his career, and he was defining who he was, and he was growing with the Jordy Nelsons and Randall Cobbs and Greg Jennings to an extent, but that one soured definitely a little bit toward things. But, it just kind of came to me about, like, where's Jordan Love 10 years from now when Dobbs is gone and Watson's gone, and this whole cast around him has probably shifted quite a bit. is it easier to build that leadership with a younger audience, with a different structure around you? That's probably what challenged Rodgers to a point later on in his career in Green Bay. But on the flip side of that, it hasn't carried to New York whatsoever. And we're not going to get into that.
All
Maybe
right.
we can talk overtime. But Tom Brady is probably one of the few, Peyton Manning in particular, where they could go to these different organizations, deep 38 to 42 years old, and still have influence and great leadership skills. I didn't need to get down that tangent, but you just got me thinking a little bit that all these guys have been growing and coming into their roles together. And it's maybe that's more of like just a unified, you don't need one vocal leader because they all just kind of understand their role and they're going for the same goal. We're all trying to prove ourselves early on in our career. Well, we got to talk about the Detroit Lions. And
yes, we do.
You took off your victory shades, and I really hope that I see you wearing them next week. But
yeah,
Detroit Lions, 6-1. Only loss came in week 2 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where they dropped that game. It was a close game, 20-16. And that's really where I put most of my focus when trying to get ready to the Detroit Lions team. I'm hoping that you come in with some different insight as far as why this team is just picking everyone's tail, because again, I'm not going to swear. But that game in particular, the one game that they lost, they shouldn't have lost that game. And it's really mind-boggling. And yes, I did say that on purpose, mind-boggling. They won every category statistically against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They had 463 total yards. They had more first downs. They won the time of possession. They had less penalties hurting them versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And yet they still lost that game. And you can go on YouTube. You can watch the entire game in its entirety without any sort of subscription, which I think is pretty handy dandy when you're doing your research. But what it really boiled down to is that Tampa Bay's defense showed up in this game, and Detroit wasn't quite clicking like they're clicking now. So we're talking about the week 2 Detroit Lions versus the week 8 Detroit Lions, which just put up 52 points against the Tennessee Titans. I had to remember that. I want to say Seattle, but what are we going to walk ourselves into on Sunday at Lambeau Field when Detroit comes to town? Because we're facing a juggernaut, the best team in the NFL. I'll just say it. Detroit is the best team in the NFL.
Yeah, it's a tough week. It's going to be a battle, that's for sure. Like you mentioned, I think the first couple of weeks, the Lions offense just didn't seem to be quite clicking, even after they got a win in week 2. I still didn't feel like they were running on all cylinders, but that has significantly changed. They are pedal to the metal, full forward. That offense is unstoppable right now. The defense,
Jared Goff sustained a little bit of an injury on Sunday, and even though they were up by 28 points, they didn't even pull him from the game. Like they have, like, Detroit is this type of mentality. Like they're hungry. It's not belief, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago in the Packers and Vikings matchup. This is a Lions team that is hungry to just destroy anything that steps in its way. They want a Super Bowl. They want to prove that they're not the 0-16 Detroit of old. And the fact that they went out there and, like I said, Jared Goff gets hurt, we'll keep him in there because we're going to just keep destroying this football team. That sends fear down my spine to just Christian. That is a very scary football team. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, part of it, you also have to consider who they were playing. They were playing the Tennessee Titans, who obviously have had many struggles this season. And
we played the Jacksonville Jaguars. We played the Jacksonville Jaguars and won a game-winning field goal. Come on. We both agree that's been a 15 to 25 point win. What happened?
Jordan Love got injured. That's what happened.
Bring me back up. I'm done beating. Glass half full me.
So, Tennessee Titans. Will Levis is still their starting quarterback. From the start of the season, the Titans lost Derrick Henry. We kind of expected them to be a struggling team. The Jaguars, we have agreed that they we expected them to be better than 2-5 by the time the matchup got to the Packers. So
I had them in the playoffs. You're right. I had Jacksonville in the playoffs.
So
yep.
let's not compare. It's not apples to apples.
All right.
Anyway, Tennessee Titans, Detroit Lions. So are you sure it was 28-0? Because I thought I read something that at
the 28-0, they're up by 28.
Okay,
and
got it. Okay,
was still in the game. Yeah.
Well, because one thing that I read in preparation for tonight. So at one point the game was 14-14, and the Titans' Calvin Ridley had over 100 receiving yards in the first half. So this defense is susceptible. In the secondary, it's a little porous. So there are opportunities. There are places where the Packers could take advantage. I think it's going to depend on who the starting quarterback is. I think it's going to depend on the creativity that Matt LaFleur can come up with to get the ball to his playmakers. But we know that he's pretty darn good at that. So yeah, I think that there is an avenue for the Packers to give this juggernaut Lions team a run for their money.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It was 14-14 with 14 minutes to go. So just the start of the second quarter. So Tennessee came out hot, for a lack of a better term. But then from that point forward, it goes to 21-14, 28-14, 35-14, 42-14. And at that point, Jared Goff is still in the game in the middle of the third quarter. They finally pulled him, and they did put their second string in there.
Yeah.
But, like, they were just laying it on thick. Do you
have
no.
Do you have any statistics on how many of those Lions points were off of turnovers?
I can tell you that Tennessee turned over the ball 4 times, and Detroit turned it over 0 times, so it probably didn't help their cause too much.
There you go. Yeah, I think that's a big point in this game as well, is the Lions defense has lived off of turnovers, and then their offense creating points off of those turnovers. So that's a big part of what their defense has been able to do. But outside of creating turnovers and Aiden Hutchinson being done for the season, the Lions defense is susceptible.
Forgot about that. Yes, Aiden Hutchinson is done. When we talked about that last week, but even prepping for this game, I'm like, you see a score like that, you'd imagine the guy's in there. But
right.
To answer your question, only 7 points off of turnovers for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, that's surprising.
And
but they're still game shifters.
Yeah, for sure. So big matchup. Packers wear their throwback jerseys, not the white ones, but those all green with the yellow helmets. They're bringing that out.
I love those.
Interesting that they announced this last week, right? It's like they needed the crowd to get some energy heading into this Detroit Lions matchup. Both teams, like I said, whoever wins this game will have sole possession of first place in the NFC North. The last time the Packers found themselves in this situation, it did not go well. They turned it on heavy in the second half, but I guess I don't have a bunch of stats about, how Jared Goff is performing or how this defense and players or whatnot. So I'll kick it over to you real quick as far as what you think or other thoughts that you want to bring on this game. All I really need to let people know who watch this is that the Detroit Lions are for real. They're motivated more than they've ever been. They're really got a great head coach. You have Jared Goff, who's had multiple games where he started like 18 of 18 on pass attempts and he's just been really hot the last couple of weeks. So they're clicking. This is a team that is clicking on all cylinders, and the Packers are heading into this game with some cylinders misfiring from here to here, there to there, here to there, here to there. So what else do you want to talk about with this matchup? Yeah,
Goff has even been, there's a lot of people that think he's the front runner for MVP right now with the way he's been playing, which is a little crazy to think. As far as statistics, I don't have a whole lot either. Talking about the Lions defense being susceptible, they are allowing 350 yards per game so far this season, which is not very high ranking as far as defensive rankings. I mentioned Ridley had over 100 receiving yards in the first half. Mentioned they've been thriving off turnovers. The offensive side of things, a big point for the Packers defense, this two-headed monster that the Lions have in the backfield, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. So they're averaging 156 yards per game rushing the ball. So stopping the run is going to be a big point for this one. But then they've got other weapons outside of their running backs. Amon-Ra St. Brown has been insane. Obviously, he's one of the top receivers in the league. Their number 2 guy, Jamison Williams, who he started making his way to that number 2 spot last season, but he's really blown up this year. He's kind of their big play threat. He's actually suspended. I believe it was for performance-enhancing drugs or something like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yep.
So he was out last week, didn't play, and he is suspended again this week. So that's one less weapon that the Packers have to worry about. But then also the Lions tight end, Sam Laporta. Last year, he was probably pretty close to the top tight end in the league. This year, he hasn't made as much noise, but he's still a threat over the middle. He's versatile, just like a Tucker Kraft, just like a Travis Kelce. I mean, he's a tight end that can block and catch the ball. So those are the weapons that the Lions have. Those are the things that the Packers have to account for on defense. And that's all I got for stats and whatnot.
I'll give you a little bit of stats. So Packers have the number 11 defense when it comes to points per game. They're giving up about 21 points a game. The Lions have the number 1 offense in the league. 33.4 points is what they're scoring. In the last 4 weeks, they put up an average of 43 points a game. In the last 4 weeks, 43 points a game. Firing on all cylinders. Very dangerous stuff right there. Lions are 6th in yards a game. Packers defense is 15th. But then on the turnover side, to your point, Packers are number 1 in the league at forcing turnovers. They have 10 interceptions, 9 forced fumbles, a total of 19. Detroit is surprisingly ranked 4th with, they're 4th on offense at not turning over the ball. So they have only 5 turnovers on the season. This is a really high-powered offense versus a 80% or better defense as we've discussed previously in the episode. So let's get into keys to victory. I will go first because I don't even have an idea of who I want to pick in this game. I have a little bit, but when it comes to me and the keys to victory, again, I preface it with pretty much anything I brought to this upcoming matchup against the Lions, that it was the defense of Tampa Bay that was able to throttle the Detroit Lions in week 2. And this has got to be a defensive matchup. I'm not as concerned, which is surprising for me to say, if Jordan Love doesn't play for whatever reason. They do have the bye week coming up following this game. So maybe they sit Love. Maybe they give him an extra week. They'll have 2 weeks to rest and get healthy as they make the final run for the end of the season. But I don't think the Packers come away and win this game unless the defense does defense things. So they're very capable of it. We've seen that they're capable of it. They're, as I've mentioned, number 1 in forcing turnovers, doing ridiculous things with stopping teams on 3rd down in general and not allowing them to gain momentum. So for me, I think the defense plays well. This is just a whole group effort. I'm not looking at one particular player. It's going to take all 11 of them on that side of the ball. I hope Jair's healthy because I'd really like that corner depth. But if it's going to boil down to what kind of defense shows up, because this is a high-powered offense. And if you can keep them to 20 points, it gives the Packers a shot regardless of who's back there at quarterback. And we can't, my thumbs up. Yeah, thumbs up right there. Thumbs up. So it's not an X factor as far as a player. It's the defense has to play. And they can't give up 28 points in the first half. There's no way the Packers come back and win that game. So
yeah, my key to victory is going to be fairly similar, I guess, correlated for sure to that defense playing well. And I've kind of alluded to it in our conversation about this game. It comes down to the turnover battle. Both these teams, their defenses have thrived on the turnover, and that's what's changed the games for the defensive side of the ball. So Packers have to win the turnover battle if they're going to win the game. And obviously that means hopefully no turnovers for the Packers offense. But if the Packers offense gives up, 2 turnovers, the defense has to get 4. You got to win that turnover battle to win this game. And then the offense has to capitalize on those turnovers. So that's my key to victory, winning the turnover battle. That's the most important thing to me this week.
So let's peel one more layer behind this before we go to score predictions. If you look at the Packers, kind of like how we look at the Lions, or I at least look at the Lions, like they have 1 loss, here's what's happened. You look at the Packers and their 2 losses. We've already kind of beat the drum that Brazil game is a little bit of an anomaly. Week 1, you're figuring yourself out. The field wasn't great, yada, yada. It's kind of a throwaway game. But specifically, then you look at that Vikings game, and had they not gotten to the hole that they got to start that, being down 28-0, they probably have as good a chance as any of winning that game. So it's been a team to, as we've discussed throughout this episode, a team that has been able to come together, step up where needed, and pull together victories. And the 2 outliers, or one specifically being the Vikings, is that they waited way too long to get going. So yes, a hot start's going to be important, but defense wins championships, and this is going to be a battle. It's America's game of the week. Tom Brady's going to be in Lambeau Field. It's
no.
We're going to have to listen to have you listened to Tom Brady yet?
No, I haven't, and I'm upset that I have to now.
You're in for a treat.
I don't know if I'm going to watch the game now.
Well, let's get to score predictions. I'll let you go first.
You're going to make me go first, huh? So last week, it was a couple weeks ago now, against the Texans, you asked me if I was ever going to be able to pick against the Packers. And I think I'm going to this week. My score prediction is Lions 27, Packers 23.
I was really hoping you were going to pick the Packers, because I am in line with you. I don't think this is a game where you win. The Packers podcast, where both the guys say the Packers are going to lose. The 6-2 Packers team facing off against Detroit, first place on the line. I don't see it happening either. The Packers just aren't there yet. They're not there consistently, mentally. They're not on the same level as Detroit is right now. So I can't, if I'm being honest with myself, I can't just come out here and blindly say that the Packers are going to go and destroy the Detroit Lions or come away with the victory. I just don't really feel like that's going to happen. Now, luckily, these teams faced twice, and I do think that they split their matchup. They got some time to figure themselves out before they have to head to Detroit. But I'm with you, and I'm not entirely sure I see it as close of a game. I'm going to take Detroit 34 and Green Bay 20. I think it's going to be a little bit of a reality check, but the season will be young. We'll head into our bye week, and we'll come back a stronger team than ever. That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, here's where my head's at with it, and it kind of correlates with what you just went through. I don't think this Packers team has it all together yet. Their offense, I don't think yet this season, I don't think their offense has completely clicked, both the running game and the passing game working well together. The defense has shown a few games where they've been elite and running on all cylinders and playing a complete game. But I agree, the Packers aren't quite there yet, but I think they will be. I think this is a tough matchup. Lions are hot. They're coming off of a game where they scored 52 points. Packers are coming off a game where they barely squeaked by a not so good team. Starting quarterback's injured, question marks if he'll play or not. I think the Packers aren't there right now, so they lose this one. But as this season continues, I think the Packers put it together, and we see the offense look elite. We see the defense look elite. And by the end of the season, the next time these two match up, I think it's a completely different game.
And again, Packers have a bye week next week. So next week on our episode, we're definitely going to recap what happens on Sunday with the Packers and Lions. And then we'll kind of lay out how we feel like this team could evolve or where they'll ultimately finish out. Maybe a second swing at predictions, if you will. And I'm right there with you. I mean, if they win this game, I don't know what the actual statistics would possibly be, but I think if they win this game, their odds of winning the division would jump up quite a bit. If they lose it, they probably are a team that finishes second in the division. Just maybe my own personal early thoughts without thinking about it too far. It's just, and that's not a problem. I'm not trying to come to grips with it, but it's all about who gets hot at the right time at the end of the season. And I'm with you. The Packers will figure it out. We just haven't seen it consistently enough to believe that they can put a whole fight against the Detroit Lions, who again are arguably, if not unarguably, the best looking team in the NFL. Well,
Yep.
That's going to wrap up this particular episode. I really hope I don't have a list, but if I do, this is another funny episode for people to enjoy, and I might have to get captions, closed captions, or something like that.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
I meant to start the episode with the whole list thing, but
it was funny. It was funny. I enjoyed it.
Well, we're going to wrap it up. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe, like, and comment down below. We will be back next week, either Thursday morning or Friday. We don't know. It's an election week, so things can get a little bit dicey. But with that, head on over to overtime. We're going to break down the whole Robert Saleh and Green Bay debacle, the Jets still sucking, and of course, our week 9 predictions. It's always a good time. So, as always, we'll see you on the internet. Thanks for watching.